I think that's us live. Hello and welcome to day 2 of the Gatherverse. We've heard so many good and important talks, panels and conversations. Gives me heart to be in this company. And thank you on behalf of my son, who will likely spend much of his life in what we are in the process of building right now. Welcome to the panelists, Amanda, Natasha, and Kahlil. I'm going to give a round of brief introductions, and then we're going to jump straight in today into our panel called Humanity First in the Metaverse. So my name is Daniël Dyboski-Bryant. I'm from the Virtual World Society, Executive Director at the Virtual World Society. And I am Director and Co-founder of Educators in VR. And we have with us today Kahlil Ashanti, who is an award-winning actor, tech entrepreneur, and a full-stack web developer who started coding in 1998. Most people didn't even have an email address back then. His career at the cross-section of entertainment and technology has seen him work with major brands like HBO, Disney, Cirque du Soleil, Sony, including writing, producing, and performing the story of his painful childhood called Basic Training. Wish I got a chance to see that, which was a Broadway hit in 2008. He is now founder and CEO of Mantis XR, a Vancouver-based technology company that creates browser-based hyper-realistic experiences for online retail. Welcome, Kahlil. And we have Amanda Stanhaus. Hi, Amanda. Amanda is a responsible innovation manager at Accenture. She combines her applied ethics subject matter expertise, developed during her time pursuing a PhD at the University of Michigan, where she was awarded the NIH's Ethical, Legal, and Social Implications of Genetics Fellowship, with her industry experience, notably as a blockchain strategist for JP Morgan and Consensus, to enable clients to responsibly adopt emerging technologies. Hi, Amanda. And we also have with us today Natasha Rabsatt. Natasha is an experienced designer, strategist, and technologist leveraging cross-disciplinary insights, travel, art, design, and immersive technologies for social good. She has led the creative vision for global enterprise learning initiatives, XR program startup and management, and advised on technical alignment for immersive technologies and platforms. And she enables people and businesses to use current and future immersive technologies in responsible ways, with emphasis on human-centered design, accessibility, education, environment, safety, and inclusion inside and outside of the metaverse. So, as you can see, we are in excellent company today with Amanda, Natasha, and Kahlil. Guys, thank you so much for joining. We had a bit of a chat just before we went live here. We were off to a good start. I'm looking forward to continuing in that spirit. How have you enjoyed Gatherverse so far, Amanda? Just briefly, anything stand out for you?
Oh, just really happy to be here with you all, as I do think the defining humanity first standards will be crucial to the success of the metaverse. So looking forward to diving into the discussion.
All right, Natasha, any quick comments on Gatherverse so far?
It's been really excellent, and the conversations have been really rich and really deep. I really love also the conversations around the earlier versions of the metaverse as well, not just what we're seeing today. Just very comprehensive and very inspiring, very innovative.
Wonderful. Okay, and Kahlil, anything from you?
Nothing to add, Your Honor. What she said.
Fantastic. We have Daniël van der Waal here with us today as well. I wasn't sure if you were going to join. Thanks for joining, Daniël. Really looking forward to bringing you into the conversation. Fantastic. Great. Yeah. Cool. So we're here to discuss humanity first in the metaverse. And I think before we get started, let's just dive into that title, because both humanity first and the metaverse might want a little bit of a definition before we get into it. So for the definition of humanity first today, we're going to be referencing Christopher Lafayette's 7 standards of the metaverse as a framework to refer to during our panel. It's not the only one, but it's very useful, and that's what we're going to be working from today. And the 7 standards as defined by Chris are humanity first, accessible, equal, education, community development, safety and privacy, and wellness. So that's kind of the ground upon which we're building this panel. Now we come to the second, maybe trickier word, is the metaverse. So first of all, in my opinion, it doesn't yet exist. We're slowly putting it together like a puzzle piece, and it means a lot of things to a lot of different people already. So rather than trying to define what it is or what it will be, I'm more interested in maybe taking it from the perspective of what we can do there, or what we will be able to do there, what we might want to do there. So from a perspective of what it can do for us. So starting with you, Kahlil, and I'm going to bring the other speakers in as we go. On that note of what the metaverse can do, what's your take, Kahlil? What can it do already, or what do you think it will do for us, or what will we do there?
Thanks, Daniel. You know, I think probably it's really interesting to think of the metaverse as an online environment, a virtual environment for social interaction, centered on social interaction. So whether it's meetings, education, shopping, going to the movies, there's so much that's possible in the metaverse that we can do. But I think if we back up one step, what's even more important is that it's social. And for it to be social, it has to be accessible and inviting. And I know that a couple of yourself, you're working in education, and I love the comparison, because I've often heard what's possible in the metaverse compared to what we thought was possible on the internet back in 1996. You know, I'm going to pretend like I'm not old enough to remember that. But you know, back then, back in the day, kids, you know, sit down, pull up a chair. Nobody had to go out and buy a phone line to participate in the internet. We all had phone lines, and phones have been around for a while. Now we're talking about building something for tools that everybody might not already have, which is why I feel like what's possible from a browser-based perspective is the most exciting part of the metaverse, because the social interaction means that ubiquitous access can lead to the kind of adoption we hope to see, so that, as you said, our kids can participate without having to feel unwelcome, which is often what happens in education. Is kids can only be what they can see. So if you've never seen a doctor growing up, you don't even know that's a possibility. But I feel like we do ourselves a disservice. I think we sort of overshoot the landing when we, in the technology bubble. I'm a full stack developer. I know we sort of I'm just as guilty as the lingo. If we can bring humanity and talk about what's possible in the metaverse by helping everyone understand the accessibility first, and then we get into devices and everything else, I think we'll have a much better time getting everyone to participate.
So helping people understand where is the metaverse and how do I get there, kind of thing. Understood. Can I get a ticket?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And what is it? You know, what's it gonna do for me? You know, that's where. You know, people have to know, well, I have so many things to do today. I was, talking about, we all have.
Why should I care also, right? As I was listening to you there, I was wondering, in terms of what it can do, I want it to make me feel, and the people I care about, or everybody, to feel at home there, or at least welcome and part of it. So maybe to Natasha, can I ask you to jump in there? What do you think the metaverse can do for us, and why should we care?
So I think the metaverse is a place for everyone. And I think that the things that it can collectively do for us is just bring us together as people, bring us together as communities where we can learn. Some of my background is around learning science as well. So we will be able to learn more deeply from a cognitive point of view as well. So there's a lot of skills and things that we can build faster in the metaverse. So there's just so much opportunity, and we can do that together.
Okay, wonderful. Gonna ask Amanda to jump in there. Amanda, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I really appreciate these conceptions of the metaverse. At Accenture, we believe that is an evolution of the internet that allows users to inhabit a shared digital experience spanning not only, fully digital, but also, our real world and everything in between. And I really appreciated Kahlil's focus on social interactions. And I would agree. And as an applied ethicist, I, hope that those social interactions are governed by ethics and norms. And do think that it'll be interesting how those norms are set as the rules of the organizations say behind not only the devices and say making those accessible and in terms of financial as well as any sort of disability considerations, and then the platforms as well as the applications. So looking to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, listening to you all, it really a perspective I'm starting to formulate in my mind is, why should we care? And really, I'll start caring when I believe that it's benevolent and that everybody can get there. Well, I already care. That's what I'm working towards with you guys on this conversation and other projects we run. I'm going to bring Daniël in, and just before I do, Daniël, I'm just going to briefly introduce you because we missed you out at the beginning. So we've got Daniël van der Waals here, who is with Beam Me Up, Your Open Metaverse. And Daniël, what's your take on this? What do you see? I mean, you're building an open metaverse, right? That's a good start.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks, Daniël, for the introduction. Happy to be here. I'm Daniël. I'm the founder of Beam Up and Your Open Metaverse. Beam Up is we started that a year and a half ago. And we started basically with building a platform for telling your story in virtual worlds, like presentations, like for online events, like with your avatar in a 3D world. So that's how it started. And with Your Open Metaverse, we started that last summer in 2021. And basically what we're building now is an infrastructure, a metaverse infrastructure, and Unreal Engine 5 toolkit, whereby you can use that to create your own virtual world, your own metaspace, as we call it, and have people, invite people to that metaspace via the browser, via your own channels, basically. And so basically we're building an example of, we try to become an example of what a truly open and decentralized metaverse will look like.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Thanks for that. And glad to have you on the panel with us today, Daniël.
Yes.
Each of these topics, each of these questions that we're going to touch on today, we could spend a long, long time on each one of them. I might come back to some, but I'm going to move on to another question now, central to this panel, and I think central to Gatherverse. So Chris Lafayette has put together 7 standards around humanity first, and the first standard itself is humanity first. Maybe starting with Amanda, what does humanity first mean to you with regards to where we are now in the stage of development towards a metaverse? What does that mean? I think
it's beyond human centric. I do think that it gets to basic understanding of respect to the people, the users, the avatars that are in the metaverse. And do you think that it's helpful, and I can speak upon this later, but I do think that as we're addressing ethical considerations in the metaverse, beyond boiling the ocean, it is useful to think about it. Actually, I use the term interaction, but also to jump off of Kahlil's comment around social interactions, that there are a few types of interactions. So how users relate to themselves and gets to questions, say, of identity and accessibility, how users relate to each other, getting into considerations of content moderation and behavior moderation, as well as how users interact with organizations and governance, say, of behavior in the metaverse. And so in all of those interactions, thinking about the users and what is best for them, in terms of, say, autonomy, but also balancing that with community well-being, I think will be the key task going forward.
Interesting. Yeah. So I remember when I started to understand what people are describing as the metaverse and my concept for it, the way I see it is that, and you should know that I'm a virtual reality headset first guy. I want to get in with my head and my hands first before 2D is great, but it's headsets for me. For me, the metaverse, the story towards it starts with platforms or computer interfaces. You can have a single user experience. In a VR headset, just an app you can put on and you can look around. Amazing. The next step is being able to see somebody else in there wherever they are, like a multi-user experience. That's great. When you scale that up a notch, you have actual social platforms, such as VR Chat, Somnium Space, Second Life, Altspace, all of these platforms. That's really quite advanced already. But when and I should mention Meta Horizons as well. But when that scales, think of the implication of not a couple of million, but a couple of billion people. Like, people have smartphones now, a couple of billion people engaging on a daily basis with the metaverse. That's not social VR, that's societal VR. And I think for me, talking about the metaverse such early days is really with this thought in mind of societal impact. You know, when it impacts my small community, great, I'm having fun. When those communities start connecting, we're building a network, fine. But I imagine this is going to ramp up to, do you remember the days when you heard about the internet and then suddenly your bank had a website and it's like, wow, that's weird. My bank is a website, at the grocery store or something, and suddenly everybody had Facebook pages. All of these organizations, the UN, you're going to be able to walk into the offices of the UN in the metaverse at some point, or your local town hall, whatever. It's going to be spatialized, and surely we need to design it in such a way that it's meaningful for us, it's benevolent, we feel safe, we feel welcome, and everybody has a stake in that, surely. What do you think, Natasha?
Yes, absolutely. So I think when we talk about humanity first, I'm thinking of it from more like a macro point of view, a more global point of view. I look at it as it is about the future. It's completing a circle. And I say a circle because it's infinite. So we've seen a lot around innovation and creating devices and different and different sort of experiences and solutions. And I sort of look at this circle, and within this circle, we have innovation and a lot of puzzle pieces that fit into this circle. And we've had these areas that have been basically blank, and humanity centric ideas, the environment, some of those pieces have been missing in that larger circle. And I think that this conference and a lot of the things that we're all bringing here to the table is we're starting to take those pieces and put them in there and saying, let's work together, let's collaborate. This is our future, not just in the 2D, in the 3D. And we're doing this not just because it's cool, but this is our lives. We make and do things for the next generations, right? And we want this to be equitable and something good that we can be proud of, but something that works. So I think looking at humanity first from that larger lens, we are helping to fill in those pieces. And we're going to need to join hands and work together, and we will learn things together that we're like, that we wish this didn't happen, or we could have done it better, but this is all part of that journey. So that's.
Thank you for that. Kahlil.
You know, I feel like one of you touched on a couple really great points, but one of them that I'd like to add to that list with design is the story, the way it's talked about. Because unless people can locate themselves in the story of the metaverse, I fear they're not going to pay attention. And that's where I feel like we could really do a lot better in the technology world. Is how do we set the table for humanity? And humanity, in my opinion, obviously these are Chris's frameworks, but I feel like it is the ability to care about someone whose life story and journey is very dissimilar to your own, something you might not actually otherwise have access to. I think that that's a wonderful promise, but I feel like we can get too elitist a lot of the times in the way the metaverse is talked about, and the way, well, yes, there's, the societal metaverse is absolutely where it can and should go, but we've got a lot of people to bring along first who are still having trouble using Zoom, so it's like, I really love the tension of how to bring that humanity along. My job in the U.S. Air Force was breakdancing for troops in some of the most dangerous parts of the world to remind them what they were fighting for.
Fantastic.
And I never forget getting off a C-5 Galaxy in Diyarbakir, Turkey, one of the places that is one of theologically where they thought the Garden of Eden existed. And just the humanity of seeing children who grew up different than I did, as an American kid who grew up thinking, America, America. And it's like, hold on, there's a whole world out there I know nothing about.
Right.
And I feel like that promise in the metaverse can really be realized. But if humanity gets lost, it just becomes all about code and technology. And the last thing I wanted to say, that before a line of code is written, it's always drawn out. It's always a story. And that's the part I really hope we can embrace as we build this tremendous opportunity for our children.
Interesting. Reminds me of a book by Bruce Chatwin called Songlines, about the Australian outback and the Aborigines who live there, and that they have a map for places they walk to via songs. They sing the songs as they walk, and it takes them there. They don't have a physical map. It's quite cool. All right. Thank you for that, Kahlil. I'll remember that stories. Daniël, please. What does humanity first mean to you as you're building an open metaverse?
I like this topic. Like a few weeks ago, I think five or 6 weeks ago, I was like, there's a lot of theory about the metaverse, a lot of videos, and of course we're creating all these worlds, experiences. But I really want to experience the metaverse, not just read about it and interact with others, to see like what people will like, how to make it accessible, how to get people in. So I just started like five weeks ago. I started this LinkedIn group, Metaverse Exploring, and I started like doing meetups in Altspace on Wednesday, and the turnout was great. So. And a lot of people, it was the first time they were doing it. Some people even like bought headsets to join the fun. So that's I think that's a good approach. To have frequent like meetups with other metaverse enthusiasts. And to discuss basically like to not build this in an ivory tower, to be in contact with others and to see what are people looking for, what do they want to get out of all this,
Cool. So for anybody who might want to join your meetups, do you want to put it in the chat so they can maybe join you next time?
Sure. Yeah. I don't have a webcam in my laptop, so I'm just gonna put up my.
All right. Okay, we'll go and do that. I'm gonna come on to the next question now, if I may. We might come. In fact, a lot of the questions touch on and lead on from what we've already discussed. But I want to ask Amanda a question, if I may. Can you please tell us, with your background, about the issues to consider when it comes to an ethical way to build and run metaverse projects? If somebody's considering running a metaverse project, what should they keep in mind if they want to work towards it being ethically sound, if you like?
Yeah. And I think this actually builds off of our previous exchange around, the societal implications. And so you are really getting to questions of kind of ethics at scale and thinking about, again, those three types of interactions in terms of user to self, user to user, and user to organization, and the role of not only organizations, but users and both of those both users and organizations, in a feedback loop kind of shape these interactions. So thinking about, say, when content moderation, rules are defined, how, users respond, and, how those how those norms and rules evolve. I do think one thing that I'm interested in is the use of standards that Christopher has used in his 7 standards that are guiding this conference, because I do think that there is a first step that organizations need to consider as they're exploring their role in the metaverse, is to initially define best practices. I do think standards are typically codified across organizations. So how can organizations take the first step in defining their own best practices that can then influence standards going forward? And so I do think, and I've written a blog post on this topic, but have identified initial places to look. Say the XR Association has released a designer guide for accessible extended reality technology, and makes a really excellent point of accommodations, say for those with any sort of disabilities, may are actually features, and they point towards say voicemail transcription that are used by all. I personally am dyslexic, and there are special fonts for all the dyslexics in the audience. There's a font called Open Dyslexia, and how the letters are designed actually makes it, I read much faster with it. And so having say that, being able to change the text can help folks, as well as thinking about identity solutions and how, organizations in some ways define, the options available to users, and say in terms of anonymity, et cetera, which has societal implications as well, and how all of this is governed, and how, organizations can lead with their values and define that in their governance. I think will also be not easy, but a key stepping stone for all of this.
Thank you for that. As I was listening there, my fellow board member, Jackie Morey from the Virtual World Society, put in the chat about meaning. So I was thinking about the 7 standards you referred to there as well, for the Gatherverse. I would like to suggest that a possible other candidate for a standard is that we design it in a meaningful way, and that it allows for people to have meaningful experience in his exchanges, collaboration. That's a powerful word for me. And I think meaning ties in with what you were saying, Kahlil, about stories. And for meaning, it also goes into the realm of having to understand other people's perspectives and allow for their interpretation of meaning. All right. This is a big topic, guys. An hour is not enough. We do have a bit more time though, and I've got a couple more questions. So here's a question, and this is let me bring this to maybe Natasha first. How can we encourage a culture as the metaverse emerges that leans towards benevolent communities, benevolent behaviors, structures, and values? How can we encourage that I mean across all stakeholders, either as users, developers, hardware manufacturers, policy standard developers? How can we encourage a culture of benevolence that the starting point for engaging with it is a perspective of benevolence? Any ideas?
So that is a really interesting and complex question. So I'll do my best to sort of answer this. I think one of the things I think a lot about when we're talking about building culture and community around mindfulness with the metaverse is that I think that many of us are at different points when it comes to development and innovation and research. So we have, for example, we have people that are like, I want to run ahead and innovate and make all of these cool things and these amazing experiences. And then we have other people that are like, well, they're data-driven, research-driven. And then we also have folks that are kind of sitting in different camps all at once. And I think to sort of build that culture, one, we come together in forums such as this to start having these conversations, because we've all learned all these different things in each of our individual careers and journeys. And then For example, if I happen to be one of those people that sit in like multiple camps. So some days I'm like art and beauty and creation and experiences, and I just want to go wild and make all these things. And then there's another part of me, I'm also into data and science and research. And then there's another part of me, you dial that down and you're like, whoa, we have to slow down here a little bit. So I think if we look at it from the point of view is, if I'm an innovator and I am just running and making and doing things, maybe we start looking at it as, well, I met these other people and I heard these different perspectives. What would they think? And then if I'm a researcher and I'm into policy and some of these other things, I would then flip the question and say, well, what would the innovators think? How can I help them too? And I think that's where we start building the culture, not just focus on our experiences, on what we like. Because this is really serious. You know, I sometimes ask myself, well, am I doing too much stuff? Is this the right way? And I think it's good to do that. But I think if we try to flip the point of views, I think we'll probably start to even appreciate some of these perspectives even more. And then we all can work, I think, a little seamlessly, work more seamlessly together on all of it. So.
Okay. As you were speaking then, it reminded me, Kahlil was talking about stories, how when companies design products or do market research, they often have this idea of the target customer and the story, the story of that person. So they define the customers and then the journey of the customer. It's all this startup speak, I'm sure. But I imagine having an image above my desk of maybe some representative people, like a very old woman who comes to the internet. How's she going to approach? How's it going to be meaningful for her to enter the metaverse? Or a young child in, I don't know, in Russia. How's it going to be meaningful for them? Or a middle-aged white guy in London with a bowler hat. If you have these stories in front of you, and as you're designing, working, have diversity in mind and right in your face as you're doing it as a reminder. That might be something you could do. Let me jump to Daniël because he's building our open metaverse, and I want to know how you're considering encouraging an open culture or a benevolent culture in your offerings, and then I'll come to Kahlil in a minute.
Sure. So basically what I think a lot of people are, of course, the internet had a great promise, Web 2 or Web 1, Web 2, it would empower people, democratize. But, ultimately a lot, just a couple of big tech, a few big tech companies, they rule the show basically, or they, I think a lot of people they find it more important to have control over their own data and privacy, and basically that's also something that's really important for us with your open metaverse. Basically, things that we're thinking about is, if you go to a branded meta space, you want to go to an experience like a Coca-Cola meta space or whatever, and then you get the option, like you can say for yourself, like, okay, how much data do I want to give to Coca-Cola? And you can just, define it, what you're comfortable with, and then you can be reimbursed by like tokens. We're also launching our own token. But that's just one of the few ways, like the many ways that you can have people make it more benevolent, full transparency. And I think that's a great promise of Web3 and the metaverse. And that's how that's our approach.
So benevolence really touches every aspect. When you're building a platform, you're building a service, you're creating an event, you're making options available to opt in or out of data sharing. Kahlil, what's your take on this? How can we develop benevolent cultures?
I wonder if we can learn lessons from AI, the way AI was designed. And I think a lot of the points that are being made are great about like you said, guy with the bowler hat, the Cockney guy, the Russian lady, the Peruvian child. How can we make it? But to be able to have the diversity of people who are actually building it is the only way to have a product that's going to be diverse enough for people to relate to it.
Right.
And there's something called the Algorithmic Justice League that I think is worth looking up, because this girl, man, I think we can learn a lot
like a
from the
superhero
mistakes.
league. Say that again, that name? That sounds like superhero.
It's called the Algorithmic Justice League. I think I'm getting that right. She did
I love that.
She did a TED Talk about how AI was, obviously I mean this with the utmost respect. We're not here to sort of, disrespect anyone, but it was designed by white males. So it doesn't recognize black faces. And she tested it out as a student at MIT by putting on a white mask over her face, and it recognized her. So we need the Peruvian child, the Russian dude, we need these people in the design of the metaverse.
Yeah, we do.
To produce a metaverse that's diverse, right?
That reminds me of some of the social structures you had. I hope I don't offend anyone. I think it comes from some ancient tribes where they had a council, and on the council you had warriors, mothers, kids, old people, ill people, and even like outsiders. And they all formed a council, and they all had a side. Our politics is a lot of middle-aged white men. Look at me, I'm a middle-aged white man. I'm very privileged, very aware of it. I do what I can in my work to work with as diverse people as I can. But the model we're operating for politics at the moment on scale, I think, is needs a review. So question is then, is this metaverse maybe the greatest opportunity to get something right? Is it an opportunity to do something different and get it right?
I think it is. And I just want to say, I don't want to take up, I know we have limited time, but I'm really passionate with our company, with Mantis XR, about making sure that we facilitate technology literacy among indigenous youth, among the neighborhoods we serve, the customers we serve, because it's really, look, we're on our way out, right? The younger ones coming up are going to design the future of the metaverse. Let's be honest. And so if we can't make sure they have the digital literacy and access to the tools to design the metaverse, and don't get me started on the education system. That's a whole another conference in its own. But I feel like that's the secret. If I could pinpoint one secret on the future of a humanity-first metaverse, it's that we send that humanity into the education system and uplift the children who will never have access to it, and say, look at what's possible if you just stick with it. And here's a laptop that doesn't suck,
Wonderful. All right. Amanda, cultivating and encouraging culture that starts out with benevolence in mind.
So I do think that it is going to come down to, setting good social norms of as users interact with each other to build that community. And I do think that there is, precedent that we can look to, say, from the gaming industry, specifically the Fair Play Alliance, which is a trade organization of the biggest in the gaming industry, have released a report with the Anti-Defamation League around best practices around basically moderation in the gaming industry. And do you find that it's really interesting, their use of one, defining, say, what is disruptive behavior versus harmful behavior, and how do you put in, say, penalties, as well as, utilize community managers, because an important aspect of this, even though it's, say, going to be the embodied internet, you are, some could be on, a virtual or, in a headset, or have augmented reality, et cetera, and everything in between, and understanding that interactions that are playing out, say in a game in this instance, can also be informed by additional societal biases or out of band communication, and so it can be quite tricky how to navigate. And this report that's linked in the blog post that I've shared in the chat really helps to unpack the best practices there. So I do think that there's at least something to look to define those best practices and eventual standards.
All right. Made me think of the saying, it takes a village to raise a kid. You ever heard of that saying? The implication is that you're in a family and you have your parents, but you run around, and if your parents aren't there, the woman down the street, the man down the road is going to look out for you.
I've been thinking of that, and then also, are the kids all right for the last exchange between you and Kahlil? So
yeah.
I don't know how many people live in a village anymore. I don't know how much that still applies, but maybe there's a new saying forming, takes a metaverse to get humanity right. Maybe we all have to pitch in on this grand project. And so, we'll see. So we have, I think we have a few more minutes left. I think we have, about 10 minutes left? So I could talk and chat with you all day long, but what I'm going to do at this point is open it up for some questions. So I think if Geta's here, can you remind us, how do we ask for questions in the chat and then I moderate with you guys? I think that's maybe how we're going to do it. Need that on a t-shirt? What's that? Keely's saying needs something on a t-shirt. Takes a metaverse to raise humanity. Yeah, you go print it. I'll buy one, Keely. All right. Let's see if we can get some questions in here. So we've got the panel chat. Right. So
Bob Jacobson there, Daniel.
Say again, sorry?
There's Bob Jacobson has a question there in the chat, in the live chat.
Thank you. I'm trying to find it. On the panel general chat, Bob Jacobson.
General chat, yeah.
Right. Yes, got you. How do we avoid the hype and exaggeration that so plagued VR in the 90s, setting us back a decade? Bob Jacobson, co-writer of Usenet, News Group, Cyvirtual, and HitLab. How do we avoid the hype and exaggeration that so plagued VR in the 90s? Short answer, Bob, right now, we don't. The hype train is in full motion. I think I'm getting hit up every week on LinkedIn by some new metaverse chief strategist of a company. It's all about the metaverse right now. What do you think? Are we going to avoid the hype? Does it have to play out and then we crash land again?
Well, again, I think Bob makes a good point about if you look at VR and the pattern matching, VR required goggles and AR didn't. So you can actually see the trajectory. One of them met people where they are. The other one required people to go out and buy something. Okay. And back then you had to have it was the ultimate nerd out experience. But I think you can't stop the hype, but eventually we all know the hype dies down and what's left is substance. And that's sort of where I think we can really make, our discussion today is really important, is that the substance is humanity. And that will last as long as it's built by the most diverse amount of people possible. So,
all right. Natasha, what do you think? Hype, is it required? Is it in the way? Does it get in the way? Or is it just a natural part of how we get on with things as humans?
I think it is, especially in a digital era, I think it is something that we will see, especially with bringing new products and things like that to market. I don't think we can ever get away from it. But I tend to agree with Kahlil that when the smoke sort of clears, we see what's useful, what's left over. And that's sort of more what is substantive. And I agree that we're looking at, it's all about people. It's about the environment. It's about people. It's about mindful design. It's about empathy and all of these things. So no, I don't think hype will go away. I think it's with any new product, right? Any new experience, there will be a lot around that. But
right. Well, I tend to agree. if we're talking about mass adoption, like I think we are, whether it's with a headset or in 2D, which I genuinely think we are. I've got a friend at Nokia who did research on the first billion TVs, the first billion home computers, the first billion microwaves. Like, he was studying that number of a billion with critical mass and stuff. And he was projecting his learnings from the first billion smartphones and the first billion internet users and so on, extrapolating that for where we might reach the first billion VR headset users. Not that that's the only way to access the metaverse. His estimation is 2027 we'll have 1 billion VR headset users, which is, you know, that's down the road. We're 2022, 5 years, 1 billion VR headset users. That's nuts.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Let's have a look. We've got a bunch of questions coming in. We had a thoughts from Aaron on health use cases in the metaverse. I think, Aaron, that might be discussed on another panel. Have a look on the program. I know there's some talks about health there. Then we've got a question from Lara Pesca-Ares. How can companies building the metaverse best handle their new role as curators of humanity? Wow, that's a phrase. Curators of humanity. I'm not sure how to answer that question. How can companies handle their role? So yeah, companies have a responsibility as curators of humanity. Amanda, do you want to have a stab at that question? I'm not sure I understand it properly. Curators of humanity.
Of course. And I feel like, full disclosure, I work with Laura. So not that I planted that question, but I think she's getting to a sense of to these interactions that I've been referring to, how organizations say, you know, set the settings that allow you, say, to design your avatar and allow you, say, to have the option, say, to be anonymous, and how standardized or flexible, say, in terms of identity, how, you know, organizations define what is appropriate, say, on their platform or in their application, et cetera. And so I do think that there is a responsibility that organizations have, and it, you know, is in their interest, as we've been discussing thus far, to create a, you know, welcoming and benevolent environment, say, for mass adoption, and making it as welcoming as possible. So
the phrase of curators of humanity, if I've understood it correctly, is the idea that the metaverse will hopefully allow us to express some of our humanity, but that expression is going to be defined by the companies that build the tools.
I would say that it's a function of the, you know, options that these organizations provide to you. And so the importance of, say, having,
for example, avatar choices. Do you get to have different skin colors? You remember when it took Facebook 10 years to make different skin colors available for the like emoji?
So that's
an option, right? Yeah.
And the other classic example here is Facebook allowing for a variety of gender identity.
Exactly. Another one. Yeah. Okay.
Options. My example for this usually is the instances where I've made an avatar, say, in a virtual world. I've never been able to accessorize and put jewelry on. Like, you know, I could put on glasses, maybe a hat, but like earrings, necklace, like, you know, bracelets are not usually an option. So that, you know, success will be that Amanda will be able to accessorize in the metaverse. But it's that sort of considerations that are, say, defined by an organization. So
thank you, Amanda. All right, we have a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to come to this next one. This is from Hail Khalaf. I work with the frontline focus in the Middle East, where access to tech is quite limited. How do we make sure that underprivileged communities know that this tech even exists and somehow have a good use for it? So I'm just gonna jump in and maybe come to Daniel on that. I'm a bit of a dreamer sometimes, and I have this dream where a company like OneWeb, which is the European equivalent of Starlink, Elon Musk's low Earth orbit network array of 5G satellites. So there's one Starlink, and then there's OneWeb. If anyone from Starlink and OneWeb is on this call, I would love to work with you to make this technology, like even just the internet, accessible to remote and underprivileged communities, because it comes back to that question, what responsibility do companies have in this? And I believe telecommunications companies, hardware manufacturers, platform designers have a huge responsibility, an ethical duty to gather as much diversity and encourage as much diversity. So how do we ensure that underprivileged communities know this tech exists? Education. At Educators in VR, we define our work in 3 ways. We help people learn in VR, we help people learn with VR, and we help people learn about VR. So we have conversations about how to use this technology. And when I say VR, it's kind of broader than that. It includes AR, mixed reality. It's just the name we have. But we need to have more conversations like this with diversity included. And coming back to the question of hype, we need the hype. We need a word, metaverse, that's on everybody's computer and laptop and news feed, because that's the first way to get people asking questions. Well, what is that? What does that mean for me? So to a degree, we need the hype. We need education to reach people. And how do we help them have a good use for it? I'm passionate about social VR, any social platforms that can connect. With Educators in VR, we've run about 3,000 fully immersive events on 20 different platforms with the express goal of reaching people. I'm very aware that we're only reaching people who have internet and an access. But part of that work is continuing this conversation with the virtual world society, the work we do there. It also includes reaching out to underprivileged communities. I feel we're coming to the end of the chat quite soon. I'm just going to check here. And we have too many questions. Thank you so much for all of your questions coming in. I'm going to thank all of the panelists as well. Daniel, thank you for joining.
Welcome.
Kahlil, Natasha, and Amanda. I wish we had more time, guys. I wish we had more time. I feel like we only just got started, but I think Chris Lafayette is planning to run some more events throughout the year, so keep a lookout for that. Of course, we got the rest of Gatherverse to look forward to, guys. Chris and the team, AWE and Gatherverse, fantastic job. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Keep gathering and spread your circles. Keep the doors open. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much, and hope to see you in the metaverse again sometime, guys.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.